These are assembly instructions for my Octagon easel box. And I have two versions of this, and they pretty much go together the same way with a few small differences. So let's start with the first one. I'm starting with this piece that looks a little bit like a sun, and so this will be the drawer that comes out from my box. I'm folding down on the score lines that form that center octagon. And then for each branch of this shape, I'm folding down on this score line that's almost midpoint. And then I'm folding down on the tab that's on the left side. And I'm doing that for all 8 sides. This is the exterior of my box, and this is the interior. So for the interior, I have a lining piece that I'm going to glue down. This is 80-pound cardstock, and I've used some pattern paper. I'm just gluing this down to the center of my box. I'm folding up the sides just to make sure that it's nicely centered. So next I'm going to flip my piece over, and I'm putting glue on one of the side tabs. I'm gluing the cut edge of the adjacent side right along the score line of the tab where I've just put glue. And then I'm putting glue on the tab that's on the right side of it, and then gluing down the neighboring panel with the cut edge of it right on the score line of that tab. And I'm just working my way around my shape, doing that with all 8 tabs, and just gluing my sides in place. So now that I've glued my sides together, I'm just pulling those flaps at the top away from the center so you can see what I'm doing. I'm just randomly choosing one flap and putting glue all over it. And then I'm folding it to the interior of my box, and I'm gluing it to the inside. So this gives my box a nice finished edge, and at the same time adds a little bit of sturdiness. So I'm putting glue on all of those flaps and doing the exact same thing with all 8 of them. This piece is for the handle. It has 4 score lines on it. 1 score line right after the tab, folding down on it, and then I have a score line right after it. So this one is going to be a mountain fold, so I'm folding it away from me, and this one is going to be a valley fold, so I'm folding it towards me. I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side. So this one gets folded away from me, and this one gets folded upwards or towards me, and that is my handle. So I have a little trim piece cut out of veneer. I'm putting glue on the underside of my veneer piece, and this is art glitter glue, and I'm just positioning it right in between the central score lines, and it should just fit nicely. So I want this panel to be the front because of the design that's in my box. So I'm putting glue from the score line to the edge on the tab, and then I'm placing it as central as I can right on the line between my 2 panels, and I want that score line as straight as possible. And then I'm putting glue on the underside of the tab at the other end. I'm gluing it down so that score line is right on that join line between the 2 panels. So that's my drawer done. Now I'm going to assemble the box that it fits into, and I'm folding down on all the score lines for it. And there are many. So I folded down on all my score lines. This is the interior of my box. This is the exterior. And I have some pieces of veneer which I'm going to use to clad the outside of my box. An octagon for this panel. Then I have the panels that fit around the perimeter. I also have these 2 pieces which I'm putting aside for now. So I'm just going to glue these down, trying to keep an even border all the way around. So now that I've glued on my veneer pieces, I'm going to lay this entire piece under a heavy book until my glue dries. I've used art glitter glue to glue on my panels. My panels didn't take very long to dry. So I'm going to assemble this piece. I'm skipping the first tab and I'm putting glue on the second one. And then I'm joining the cut edge of my first panel to the score line on my tab where I've just put glue. Now I like to use a bone folder on pretty much every step when I assemble boxes. I find it gives it a better finish and crisper lines. So I'm just continuing along. So I've glued in this panel, now I'm gluing in the second one. So this side is done. I'm going to do this side now. I'm putting glue all over the tab, tucking it under, and the cut line of the center piece is right along the score line. And then I'm putting glue on the next tab over and gluing that panel in place. This is going to be the top of my box, and this is going to be the bottom. I'm putting glue on these 2 tabs. I'm tucking them inside my box, and they should just fit between the score lines of those side panels. So I'm going in with my bone folder on the inside and just spreading that glue. So this side's done. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side as well. I'm covering the tabs in glue, So I'm just positioning that cut edge right along the score line of my tabs. So then I have these two tabs at the front of my box. I'm temporarily folding them outwards, putting glue all over them, and then I'm folding them inwards towards the interior of my box. And I'm doing that with both of them. So now I'm taking my drawer piece and I'm inserting it inside my box. It should be a relatively tight fit, but you should be able to pull it out nicely. So next I have all my pieces to create the easel part of my box. I have this long strip and it has 3 score lines along the length of it. So I'm just folding down on the score lines. And I have 2 of them that are going to be mountain folds and 1 of them is going to be a valley fold. So it's going to look like this. And then I have the piece, now this is the part that's going to rise up as you open. So I've got my center ornamental piece. I'm putting glue on the underside of it. I'm pretty impressed at the delicate cuts that I was able to do in this wood veneer. So I'm putting this piece right against the lower cut edge of the larger piece. So I have it on my mat so that the lower part is 3 inches. I have the lower part on my mat and I'm using my mat as a guide to center that smaller octagon. Again, I'm putting my wood veneer pieces under a heavy book until the glue dries. I'm going to pull my drawer out just a little bit and I'm going to take that strip that has the score lines on it. I'm putting glue from the score line to the edge on the tab that's at the end. I'm going to position it so that it's centered in that cutout. I just want to make sure there's an even gap on both sides, both the left and the right. And then I'm going to put glue from the score line to the edge on the other end. I'm going to lower that into my drawer piece. The score line on my strip is right at the top of my drawer piece. And I want that nice and centered so there's an even gap on both sides. And then I have this extra little rectangle. I'm putting glue on the underside of it. I'm gluing my strip so that's even on both sides and just below that middle score line on that thin strip. So I'm putting glue from the score line to the end of that piece that I've just glued on. I'm taking my veneer piece and I want the bottom of my veneer piece, so that cut edge, to be right along the cut edge of the opening that's on my box. And I want this as centered as possible so that there's an even border on all the remaining sides. And then when I have it positioned properly, I'm slowly opening my box just so that I can get in there, and I'm just pinching down on the back of my easel to make sure that my veneer is properly stuck down. And then I have my piece of veneer that goes on the front just to complete the octagon, and I'm just gluing that down. Open my drawer a bit and apply pressure onto the veneer. There you have it, my little octagon box with the veneer accent. So this is the second option for my box. So my drawer goes together almost the same way as for the first version. For this version, the part that's different is I am using a metal brad as my pull instead of putting on a handle. I have 3 decorative panels that I'm going to glue to the front of my box. I have one of them that has a hole in the center, and that's to fit the brad. So I'm just gluing down my decorative panels, and for the center one, I'm making sure that the holes are stacked up exactly on top of one another. And then I'm going to take my brad and I'm going to insert it into the hole, and I don't want it flush against my box. I want it to stick out just a little bit. I'm going to use my scraper tool as a spacer, and then I'm opening up the pins on my brad. There's a little bit of space between the head of my brad and my panel. And then I'm putting red line tape. You can use double-sided tape here too, but I'm covering my brad with red line tape. Just because my red line tape is very narrow, I'm putting a few layers on top of my brad to keep it in place. And then I have this rectangular piece. I'm putting glue on the underside of it and gluing it to the underside of that panel to keep my brad in place. I'm applying pressure to make sure that that brad stays in place. And then the rest of the box goes together the exact same way as the first one. Now I'm just assembling the box that the drawer fits into, and it goes together the same way as the first version. So I folded down on all the score lines for this, and I'm about to glue down my pieces of wood veneer. And for this one, you'll notice that there's a piece of wood veneer that fits over the opening on the top of the box, which isn't necessary for the first version. So I'm just going to glue all of this down, trying to center it as best I can. So I finished gluing all my veneer down, and I'm just going to put it under a heavy book to wait until my glue dries. This is the decorative piece for the top of my box. I'm gluing these 2 layers together now and then putting them under a heavy book so that they lay flat. So now that my wood veneer has dried to my cardstock base, I'm assembling this piece exactly the same way as I did for the previous version. I'm just inserting my box. The strip that creates the easel goes together the exact same way as for the previous version. I'm putting glue on that small tab at the end. I'm inserting it at the front of my box, making sure that there's an even gap on both sides. The score line of the tab is right against the front of that opening. Then I'm putting glue all over that last segment at the back. Flip my piece over and making sure that my drawer is nice and straight, and I'm placing that score line right at the top of my drawer piece, and then I'm pressing down, and then I have my little rectangular piece. Probably should have been cut out of yellow. I'm just gluing that right below the score line, making sure that the edges are nice and flush. I'm putting glue all over that rectangular part, and I'm going to take my decorative piece. My top piece is centered horizontally, right flush against the bottom of my box. And so that's the second version of my easel box.